or things that could be happening in your mind between now and then, that'd be really great.
Well, today is actually the 20th, and we had a context shift that we'd forecast for an occurrence yesterday, and we believe we've actually seen we know we've seen a 7% spike in language because we run these spiders to do, a spider is a thing that goes out and crawls through internet pages and sucks out words based on our particular algorithms. But we're running these spiders in our servers that are validation spiders. They attempt to locate words and language that we forecasted appearing at a particular time so that we know we're on our temporal track. And indeed, we saw a number of things occur on the 19th that were very clearly within the economic realm and so on. There were Chinese, for instance, came out and said that, the world can't afford to buy treasuries.
Right.
And they essentially set a limit and said that it is impossible for the planet to absorb or double the amount of U.S. treasuries involved. Since we know that the powers that be were attempting to do just that before July, we now know that that will not occur, that the planet will not double the level of treasuries held, and therefore between now and July, the dollar will collapse. It'll collapse at the point that they are not buying treasuries anymore, and the cycle becomes a circular reference in the sense that the Fed will purchase U.S. treasuries and attempt to off them to other parts of itself, and it becomes this little circular loop, and we spiral into Zimbabwe-style hyperinflation. I don't think that'll last very long, but we're now fairly confident it will occur before July. July is a rather major shift in the emotional components that we have, and we're forecasting that at that point, the pretty much planet-wide revolutionary phase of things will be well settled in, and we would expect social chaos and rioting and revolution in a number of countries by that point that will continue for a number of years afterwards.
Yeah, that's really intense. So I've been broadcasting some of the interviews of Lindsey Williams. Have you heard of
Yes,
Lindsey?
yes,
Okay.
I'm aware of Lindsey, yeah.
So he makes the point that the elite have one timeline in mind. They have this expectation that things are going to go a certain way for the next 2 years. The dollar's going to lose value, of course, but it won't happen very suddenly until the end of the 2-year line. And then at that point, it could get really ugly overnight. And so I was wondering if you had any sort of interpretation of perhaps the elite are wrong. The elite think one thing, but...
Well, that is their plan. I would
Right.
agree with his statement there. I've seen enough to suggest that that's the case. They imagined a, let's call it, orderly step down in the value of the dollar and a gradual replacement of the dollar.
Right.
My particular data shows that we live in a chaotic universe, and that the best laid plans of mice and men Afghan agley.
Sure, absolutely. And so that leaves me with a question, and I've talked about this with a lot of people who are in this sort of awakening or woo-woo world or whatever you want to call it. I've asked them, why are the elite pushing so hard ahead of 2012 to consolidate control if it's just going to be complete chaos and a lot of people are going to die and et cetera, et cetera. Why would this huge consolidation of power now ahead of time? Do you have any
Well,
ideas
okay,
on that?
there's the problem. We must, as a radical linguist, I always stop and I say I object to why questions
Right.
because that goes to intent.
Yeah.
And I'm rarely beyond, when I want my next cup of coffee, ever able to judge my own intent, let alone that of others.
Sure.
That having been said, then we must also acknowledge that anything that we say towards that idea is speculation.
Right.
There are some evidential points, though, that suggest that there's a huge fear wall that the powers that be have around the 2012 date. We have all kinds of evidence going back to Pope Gregory having spent a good portion of the papal treasury at the time in
Yeah.
the 1500s to re-engineer the calendar such that the Mayan long count would end at exactly 11:11 a.m. on December
Right.
21, 2012. They put 31 German mathematicians to the task of making that occur, and they jiggered the calendar so that it would. So they've got a lot of investment in this going back 400 or 500 years.
Right.
It is, in our work, it is hugely backed by fear of an external something, which of course we can't really name because we're not the powers that be. But there are subcategories of that fear that include the idea that there would be a massive political or spiritual awakening among the populace that would undo all of their work at this very end time. And so they wish to retain control, in my opinion, or speculation,
Right.
all the way up to the end of 2012 because they want to, at the last minute, bolt down their rabbit hole and pull the door behind them,
Right.
leaving the rest of us to face whatever it is that they fear. And that's pretty much a general, broad description of their end game plans. And you could see that if things collapse too early, and they bolt for their rabbit holes, say, a year in advance, well, that gives us a year to go find shovels and dig them all out.
Right. And to build
and they
our own
wouldn't-
ships.
Correct, and they wouldn't want that.
Right.
Then you have to also go along on something else,
Yeah.
and that is the fact that I understand that you're on a college.
Yeah, we're here at MIT. I'm a grad
Oh, okay,
student
the
here.
height of the scientism religion. Yes, you guys are right in the place of the sorcerers, the Vatican, if you will, of the science religion. And I'm a scientist by nature, although I'm educated and not schooled,
Sure.
and that gives me a huge advantage over the academics. But I recognize both out-of-place artifacts within archaeology and the fact that we live in an extremely chaotic planet that has cyclic cataclysms, and those cycles appear to be around the 11,000 to 500 to 12,000 year cycles. We're 11,804 years since the last cataclysm. There's a whole lot of suggestions that we're headed for another cataclysm relative to the 2012. Every single planet in the solar system is going through some kind of giant climatic upheaval, which I relate to what I call the big squeeze, having to do with these magnetic effects that are coming from the sun. Further, we know that, in my estimation, I actually did an analysis, and in 3 sites in the Mayan or Mesoamerican kingdom area, because it includes one Inca site, just in these monuments of these 3 particular sites and the layout of the cities, I figured that that particular culture had 10 billion calories, human calories, invested in creating what they did.
Yeah.
And the creations all go to pointing us, this current generation, towards a specific time and the specific events which relate to the sunspot cycle. And the sunspot cycle is not merely 11 years or 22 years in length, both of which numbers, by the way, are key numbers for the Illuminati and all these
Exactly.
secret societies, including the Skull and Bones dudes. So they put a huge investment of calories into telling us, hey guys, watch out. And we're right there now, and the powers that be are freaking out. So this is a big, huge as far as I'm concerned.
Definitely. So you mentioned 11,804 years. A friend of mine, I was talking about this with the other day, asked me, what sort of scientific evidence do we